وأعطي أن يعطي روحا لصورة الوحش حتى تتكلم صورة الوحش، ويجعل جميع الذين لا يسجدون لصورة الوحش يقتلون، ويجعل الجميع الصغار والكبار والأغنياء والفقراء والأحرار والعبيد تصنع لهم سمة على يدهم اليمنى أو على جبهتهم، وأن لا يقدر أحد أن يشتري أو يبيع إلا من له السمة أو اسم الوحش أو عدد اسمه. هنا الحكمة: من له فهم فليحسب عدد الوحش، فإنه عدد إنسان وعدده 666.
This would be the time, because you really need to bring China into the creation of a new world order, financial world order. They are kind of reluctant members of the IMF. They play along, but they don't make much of a contribution because it's not their institution. Their share is not commensurate. Their voting rights are not commensurate to their weight. So I think you need a new world order that China has to be part of the process of creating it, and they have to buy in. They have to own it the same way as, let's say, the United States owns the Washington Consensus, the current order. And I think this would be a more stable one, where you would have a coordinated policies. So there is a general sort of lack of confidence in currencies, and a move away from currencies into real assets. The Chinese are continuing to run a big trade surplus, and they're still accumulating assets, and basically the renminbi is permanently undervalued because it's tied to the dollar. There is a diversification from assets that normally held by central banks into other assets, especially in the area of commodities. So there is a push in gold. There's a strength in oil, and that is in a way a flight from currencies. As long as the renminbi is tied to the dollar, I don't see how the decline in the dollar can go too far. Now, of course, to some extent, it's very helpful, because with the US consumers saving more and spending less, exports can be a way for the US economy to be balanced. So an orderly decline of the dollar is actually desirable. The system is broke and needs to be reconstituted. We cannot afford to have the kind of chronic and mounting imbalances in international finance. So you need a new currency system, and actually the special drawing rights do give you the makings of a system. You could actually internationally create currency through special drawing rights. And this is, we've done it. We issued $250 billion. And that's a very, very useful step. There is a cost to using SDRs. It's a very small cost at the moment. It's only less than 0.5%, but still is a cost. So somebody has to pay it. And I think we have actually the means to do it, because the IMF has very large gold reserves and kept in the books at a very low price. And it has been decided to use those gold reserves to the benefit of the least developed countries. So the IMF could actually pick up the cost of paying for the special drawing rights.
Using its gold reserves.
And in fact it's being done. It hasn't gotten any publicity, but I understand that in Istanbul a deal was signed where I think the UK and France actually transferred $2 billion of their SDRs. It is not necessarily in our interest to have the dollar as the sole world currency, because as the world economy grows, it needs additional currency. And if the dollar is that additional currency, it means that the US has to have a chronic current account deficit, and that is not appropriate. So I think it's in our interest as well to reform the system. I think this is a healthy, if painful, adjustment that the world has to go through.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to participate for the 8th time at this important meeting, even if only in a virtual way. That we are in the midst of the 4th industrial revolution, which accelerates global change in much more comprehensive and faster ways than the previous 3 revolutions. I'm proud that the government of Dubai has been so foresighted in establishing a Center for the 4th Industrial Revolution in cooperation with the World Economic Forum. The objective is to quickly recognize the potential of new technologies, as well as develop the necessary ethical and political frameworks around those new technologies to ensure that those technologies are human-centered and society-oriented. The world has to overcome not only the damage done to our economies and our societies by COVID-19, it also has to confront the repercussions of a dangerous clash between major global powers. History is truly at a turning point. We do not yet know the full extent and the systemic and structural changes which will happen. However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems and supply chains will be deeply affected. In times of crisis, the role of governments is more important and more relevant than ever. What is also needed is a summit like this one to go beyond crisis management and to look into constructive ways we can build our common future. Our futures are intrinsically connected to one another, as the profound challenges to mankind, such as climate change, are globally interconnected and require collaborative responses. In conclusion, and despite all the challenges, we have to uphold our responsibility, which we have towards the next generation, and which we can only fulfill through collaboration on a national and on a global level. I wish you an impactful and successful meeting.
Mr. President, welcome to the Business Roundtable. Yeah, oh yeah, everybody sit.
I think, my mother had an expression, out of everything terrible, something good will come if you look hard enough for it. I think this presents us with some significant opportunities to make some real changes. We are at an inflection point, I believe, in the world economy. Not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations. As one of the top military people said to me in a secure meeting the other day, 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people dying, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. We've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it. So anyway, I'm going to hush up, Mary, fire away.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us just how devastating a global cross-border threat can be. Climate change and biodiversity loss are no different. In fact, they pose an even greater existential threat, to the extent that we have to put ourselves on what might be called a warlike footing. Having myself had the opportunity of consulting many of you over these past 18 months, I know you all carry a heavy burden on your shoulders, and you do not need me to tell you that the eyes and hopes of the world are upon you, to act with all dispatch and decisively, because time has quite literally run out. The recent IPCC report gave us a clear diagnosis of the scale of the problem. We know what we must do. With a growing global population creating ever-increasing demand on the planet's finite resources, we have to reduce emissions urgently and take action to tackle the carbon already in the atmosphere. including from coal-fired power stations. Putting a value on carbon, thus making carbon capture solutions more economical, is therefore absolutely critical. Similarly, after billions of years of evolution, nature is our best teacher. In this regard, restoring natural capital, accelerating nature-based solutions, and leveraging the circular bioeconomy will be vital to our efforts. As we tackle this crisis, our efforts cannot be a series of independent initiatives running in parallel. The scale and scope of the threat we face call for a global systems-level solution based on radically transforming our current fossil fuel-based economy to one that is genuinely renewable and sustainable. So, ladies and gentlemen, my plea today is for countries to come together to create the environment that enables every sector of industry to take the action required. So, how do we do it? First, how do we get the private sector all pulling in the same direction? After nearly 2 years now of consultation, CEOs have told me that we need to bring together global industries to map out, in very practical terms, what it will take to make the transition. We know from the pandemic that the private sector can speed up timelines dramatically when everyone agrees on the urgency and the direction. So each sector needs a clear strategy to speed up the process of getting innovations to market. We need to align private investment behind these industry strategies to help finance the transition efforts, which means building the confidence of investors so that the financial risk is reduced. Crucially, investment is needed to help transition from coal to clean energy. If we can develop a pipeline of many more sustainable and bankable projects at a sufficient scale, it will attract greater investment. They include energy, agriculture, transportation, health systems, and fashion. The reality of today's global supply chains means that industry transition will affect every country and every producer in the world. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the private sector is ready to play its part and to work with governments to find a way forward.
الدراسة وجدت أن حجم الانبعاثات الممولة بلغ أكثر من 1 جيجا طن من ثاني أكسيد الكربون، أو ما يعادل 3% من الانبعاثات العالمية في 2020. وتظهر بعض الأرقام أن البنوك قدمت أكثر من 3.8 تريليون دولار إلى مشروعات الوقود الأحفوري منذ إبرام اتفاقية باريس للمناخ في 2015. ومع التوجه العالمي نحو خفض الانبعاثات، فإن بعض البنوك الكبرى مثل بنك اوف أمريكا وباركليز ومورغان ستانلي بدأت قياس والإفصاح عن انبعاثات الكربون الناتجة عن الإقراض والاستثمار. وتكمن أهمية هذه الخطوة في وضع التغيير المناخي كأحد المخاطر التي تواجه القطاع المصرفي. والتي قد تشمل الضرر المباشر من تدهور أنشطة الائتمان في ظل تزايد حالات إفلاس المقترضين، هذا فضلا عن مخاطر السوق من حيث انخفاض قيمة الأصول في ظل التحول العالمي نحو الحياد الكربوني.
We're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new accounting is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having an almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money. But also, this new money will be sovereign in nature. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The US is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well.
بتبرم بتنبش على حل. في شيء لازم يتغير، ناطرين شيء يغير هالامور. نحن عنا بلبنان بعد على اصعب، يعني دينونة البلد اللي عايشين فيه اصعب بعد. فبلبنان نشوف الناس عم تبرم على اشياء تانية، ناس ناطرة يمكن يتغير قصة العملة والدولار إلنا سنتين وأي متى. ناس يمكن ناطرة يمكن يرخص الفيول، أو يمكن بعض الأشخاص ناطرة زودة معاش، يمكن بعض الأشخاص ناطرة باسبور شي فيزا تجيها ويفل. بوقت العالم عم بقن، البلد عنا عم بقن، ناطرين كتير ناس من حولنا. نحن عروسة المسيح شو ناطرين؟ هل نحن ناطرين الفيول؟ هل نحن ناطرين زودة معاش ينحل الدولار؟ شو رجائنا نحن؟ شو رجاء الكنيسة العروس؟ ورجاء العروس بالعريس، والعريس على البواب، والعريس على البواب.
إنجيل متى إصحاح 11، متى 11 من 25 ل 30. متى 11 من 25 ل 30. في ذلك الوقت أجاب يسوع وقال: أحمدك أيها الآب رب السماء والأرض، لأنك أخفيت هذه عن الحكماء والفهماء وأعلنتها للأطفال. نعم أيها الآب، لأن هكذا صارت المسرة أمامك. كل شيء قد دفع إلي من أبي، وليس أحد يعرف الابن إلا الآب، ولا أحد يعرف الآب إلا الابن، ومن أراد الابن أن يعلن له. تعالوا إلي يا جميع المتعبين والثقلي الأحمال، وأنا أريحكم. احملوا نيري عليكم وتعلموا مني، لأني وديع ومتواضع القلب، فتجدوا راحة لنفوسكم، لأن نيري هين وحملي خفيف.
بس إنه كيف بنعرف إنه المسيح قرب؟ ليش هالقد محمسين إنه العريس صار على البواب؟ على أي أساس؟ يعني هل بحق لنا، ما زال ما حدا بيعرف أي متى الاختطاف؟ هل بحق لنا في علامات، في اشياء ندرسها؟ هل في امور ممكن انا اقراها بالكتاب المقدس؟ صح ما فيني حدد النهار، بس هل في علامات؟ ولما بنقرا بالكتاب المقدس عن وجود علامات، هيدي لتندرس وتنوعظ وتتعلم.
تاني وحدة هي القدرة على التحكم في العالم. جاي شخصية، جاي حكومة، جاي نظام، ما بعرف شو رح يكون، شو رح يتسمى، أي اصطلاح رح بوقتها يعتمد، ما بنعرف، ما ضروري نعلق بالاصطلاحات. لكن جاي شيء رح يتحكم بالعالم كله. قبل هالقرن الأخير كان فينا نشوف كيف مين بيقدر يتحكم بالعالم كله؟ أبداً. هلأ عم نشوف فعلاً كيف بيتحكموا بالعالم كله، كيف مين ممكن يظهر ويتحكم بالعالم كله. متحكمين فينا وبالعالم كله. مش ديكتاتور بيتحكم بدولة ورجل دين بطائفة، حدا رح يتحكم بالعالم كله. ما اقتربت النهاية؟ مش عم نشوف العالم كيف عم بيتوحد بالانتشار السريع، بالقدرة على التحكم من شخصية واحدة؟
بالحقيقة نير الرب هو هين وخفيف ورائع جدا. عنوان تأملاتنا بهذا الصباح: نداءات كتابية عاجلة. نداءات كتابية عاجلة.